Please help me welcome to the stage award-winning speaker, Lisa Cini.
In my house, there are 4 generations under one roof. When asked to describe my house, I usually tell people we've had 6 total knee replacements, 5 back surgeries, 2 dogs, 6 chickens, bees, a sprinkling of ADD, and for good measure, we threw in some Alzheimer's. Now, I'm also an interior designer, so of course, everybody thinks my house must be beautiful. But in reality, it looks a lot more like, well, frat house meets nursing home. Now, the greatest tragedy in my life was when my grandmother recently passed. She was 96, suffered from Alzheimer's, and had lived with me and my family for the past 4 years. When I was young, my brothers and sisters and I would travel to southern West Virginia to spend the summers with my grandparents. My grandmother would cook and clean for us while we went out exploring the woods. I wanted my summer vacations to never end. Show of hands if you've ever felt like that. My grandfather had the job of putting food on the table, and he was a great hunter. He had trophy heads hung all over the walls. Now, from the time I can remember, I wanted to be a surgeon. And at 7 years old, I would ask questions that most 7-year-olds don't ask. Questions about how life and death worked. And back then, there was no Discovery Channel. So, one night when we were eating dinner, deer meat to be exact, I asked my grandmother, do animals feel pain when they're killed? She said, oh no, animals don't feel pain. I think she was worried that I was too young and she needed to protect me, so she didn't tell me the truth. Well, that was enough for me. So my sister and I set off for the watering trough that had these huge bullfrogs that we could catch. My sister was not the tomboy that I was. I was a tree climbing, dirt bike riding, beef jerky eating explorer. And she was more like the pretty dress with pretty shoes playing Barbies type of girl. Well, I found this huge bullfrog and I had her hold its legs down, belly up. I pulled out a butter knife that I had smuggled down from the kitchen, and I proceeded to perform my first operation. I told her, hold the frog still! As the moment that the knife touched the frog's belly, it struggled to get away. Right then, I realized animals felt pain. I ran back to the house and told my grandmother what I almost did. Her face went pale, realizing that her lie to protect me had actually almost caused me to do harm. Let's be honest, lying is not inherently a good thing. But are there moral benefits to lying? My grandmother's Alzheimer's had gotten kind of worse, and she thought we were lying to her about everything, even taking her medications. And she needed those medications. She had high blood pressure, and we were really struggling to figure out how to do it right. And then I had an idea. I bought one of those small pocketbook calendars and stickers. The plan was to have her place a sticker on the day she took her medicine, and she couldn't argue with us. Day 1, everything went as planned. Day 2, she argued that we had placed a sticker there, and she had not. Day 3, I had her initial beside the sticker. I thought, you're not going to outsmart me. Day 4, she said we were forging her initials. The issue was that my mother wanted to argue the point. My mom wanted to be correct. And then my grandma would argue back. And it was a yes, I did, no, you didn't, until the whole house was an earthquake. Finally, my grandma would scream, you're trying to kill me! This hit my mother hard. It was an aftershock to realize that with all of her efforts, to take care of my grandma and to provide her awesome comfort and love, she thought she was trying to kill her. That's when I realized that being correct is not the same as being kind. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to lie to them. So is lying okay? You're probably thinking, never, especially if you've been hurt by an immense lie. Maybe you're still hurting. But humor me for a moment. Have you ever told a child that Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, or the Tooth Fairy were real? Or played along during a tea party when you know there's no tea in the cup and she's really not a fairy princess? Or maybe you're getting ready to go out and your friend asks you if she looks, okay in that outfit, and you know she doesn't have time to change, and you just play along and say, oh, you look great. Now, I have to admit, these are small lies, what we call white lies. But what about a huge lie, a big lie? Was it okay to lie to the Nazis when they came searching for Jews to haul them off to concentration camps? Would you have played along and lied and said Anne Frank and her family were not hiding there? Let's be honest, it's not as easy as we'd like it to be. You might have even lied about an animal feeling pain. The point is, we need to loosen our control on being correct and focus more on being compassionate, kind, and humane. Now, when I was 25, I worked at a nursing home. That's where I met Martha. Martha was like all dressed up. She had on her pearls and her red lipstick and a beautiful outfit and this unbelievable hat. She was ready to hit the town. I told her how pretty she looked and I said, Martha, where are you going? And she said, oh, my son is coming to pick me up and we're going to go to dinner. I saw her waiting by the front door for hours. Periodically, she would go up to the nurse and ask her, when's my son coming? Can you call him? Can you check to see when he'll be here? The nurse would say, soon, Martha. He's coming soon. And then Martha would go back to waiting or on about her day. I got so angry at that nurse. I thought, she's not even paying attention to Martha. She's lying to her. She probably hasn't even called her son. Finally, I got so irritated, I marched up there and I said, look, stop ignoring Martha's request and call her son. She's been waiting by the front door for hours. The nurse looked up at me and she smiled. And she said, oh, honey, her son's not coming. He never does. But telling her this over and over again just hurts her over and over again, horribly. So we just say soon, and then she forgets and goes on about her day. That day, I learned that sometimes the kindest thing that you can do for someone is to play along. Now, I have to come clean. You know when I told you the story about the frog? Well, I actually dissected it alive. And I decided to lie to you because I thought you might be so horrified by what I had done that you would shut down, that you wouldn't have been able to separate out the 50-year-old woman from the choices of the 7-year-old girl. And to be honest, when I think about it, I think that's why I became an interior designer and not a surgeon, and my sister is now a vegetarian. And if you think about that right there, we've saved a lot of animals' lives. The point is, you have to be open to doing what the most kind thing is, even though sometimes you're going to make a mistake. And then you have to forgive yourself, because nobody's perfect. And while I'm still confessing, the greatest tragedy in my life was not my grandmother dying. It was sad. But she was 96, had lived a great life, and she was ready. It was not a tragedy. The greatest tragedy in my life was when my nephew, little Matt, died. He was 19. When little Matt died, my grandmother's Alzheimer's had gotten pretty bad at that point. At his funeral, she kept on calling him the wrong name. It was upsetting for everyone. My brother, who had just lost his only child, didn't correct her. He just played along, showing her compassion, kindness, and love. Sometimes playing along is more important than being correct. So if at some point my memory fails me, like it did my grandmother's, and I happen to be with you, I may ask you where my nephew, little Matt, is, and when he's coming to visit. Please don't remind me of his tragic passing at age 19, even if I ask you 1,000 times. And for God's sakes, don't correct me. Just meet me where I am, lie to me if you love me, play along, and tell me I'll see him soon.